Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sunir Shah. This is another Agency Connect. I'm CEO of AppBind. We are always talking about how agencies can be more sustainable. And I am here with Leanne Woff of Audacious Empires, who has figured out a really, I think, pragmatic and intelligent way to pipeline her clients from the beginning to end of their lifetime so that she's making profit the whole way around. And I had to invite her on. So thanks for being on here. Why don't you introduce yourself and what Audacious Empires does?
Thanks, Ania. So I'm Leanne. I am the founder of Audacious Empires. And what we do is we work with empire builders primarily to build, scale, and systemize their empires.
What does that mean in the year 2022? What is an empire builder, and should I be concerned?
No, so
This
we're
is
not.
obviously
We're not in
we
those
already started
times.
off
It's all
silly.
good.
This is our third attempt to start this, so here we go. Okay, yeah, but here you go. What is an empire builder in your mind?
An empire builder is somebody that is not playing small. You're not just looking for one-to-one clients. You want to build an organization. A lot of empire builders will have purpose and impact at their core. And so they want to build one-to-many models to therefore scale and get the biggest impact possible.
One of the things that I love about your brand, and this is actually makes me sad about my own marketing, but I always, when I was interviewing people, I have this rule. When I was at FreshBooks or Olar, I had one question. I told people it was the most important question in the interview, and it was. I really didn't care about anything else. If you failed this question, you'd be out. And it was, what is the zaniest thing you ever did? And they was like, you mean legally or illegally? Oh, please tell me. But your branding is audacious. Like right at the top, it's badass online business management. I love that. And then your emails, your out of office emails, also like exciting and punchy and out there. And I love that because as an agency, so many agencies I see just talk about the three-letter acronyms, as we say PPC, SEO, SEM. But no, you're talking about from the point of your client. They want to be. These are like personality brands, like personal brand clients, and you're showing that you have a personality brands, and it's out there. And I think it really clearly speaks in client language by showing what you can do for yourself. I just love your brand. So first, before we get into anything, if you're an agency thinking about your own positioning and branding, go check out audaciousempires.com and look at how they position themselves and show their brand values throughout the site. It is like on point and sharp. It is a really nice. You did a really nice job with communication, copywriting. Now I've buttered your bread. I think it's valuable because we took 3 takes to even begin this thing. It's late for me. It's 9:00 for me in the evening and early in the morning for you. So I appreciate it. So tell me, okay, we always do these questions right at the beginning. It's like because the agency's listening, just to give it a sense of where you fit in the agency space. So first, like, how old is your agency?
So it's about 8 years old.
8 years. So, I mean, you've been like you have. I mean, we'll get into this. This is part of it, but you've had a fair amount of experience doing this. But and then so how many staff have you? Do you have now, full time and contractors?
Okay, so I have 4 consistent employees. So they're my core team. And then I have contractors who there's probably 2 or 3 contractors that I bring in based on what the specialty needs of different clients are.
And I mean, we talked about empire building, but who is an actual? What is your typical client? Like, what's your ideal client profile? How would they describe themselves?
How would they describe themselves? They're thought leaders, they're change makers, course creators, coaches, who are wanting to make a big impact and a ripple effect on the planet.
Yeah, awesome. And then what kind of, and just like the last question is like, what kind of services do you provide them to achieve this?
A lot of what we do is around process, systems, and then automation. So it's looking at how businesses are set up, how they function, and then how they're using technology to then scale and streamline.
And I guess I should ask, just color that in, like what kind of technology do you normally use for automation, just to give the shape of like what ecosystems you are in for other agencies, just to see where you are. Yeah.
So a lot of the time we're in Active Campaign land. So I love Active Campaign. I'm a certified consultant, and just like their whole take on marketing automation, and it not just being about email and email sequences. Like it's a very personalized approach. And so a lot of the time when we're looking at systems, we're looking at how are you communicating with your audience, and then how does that then flow on to how you operate internally? So we'll always look at your internal communication tools, your external communication tools, so CRMs, different avenues for people to connect with you. So whether that's chatbots or like web chats on your site, and then integrating all of your different marketing systems as well. So that's where we have, Zapier and Make and Pabbly Connect is new. Lots of people are gravitating towards that because of the one-time payment thing. And then because we have a big operations and process function, we also spend a lot of time looking at the systems that they use to manage their business. So Asana, ClickUp, Monday, all of those.
And it's actually interesting, total tangent. I was just talking to another Active Campaign agency, also working in the coaches to thought leaders space, weirdly. And he had this realization that for these kind of clients, you're not just selling marketing automations, because the automation tool feeds into so many other tools because they're so integrated. He ends up doing business automation because for people who sell thought leadership and time, they want to package it up and scale that. I guess that's what they're buying from you, is to turn their smartiness into something that's packaged up and builds increasing revenue. That it's you're end up automating a lot more than just email sequences. It's also how they fulfill, I guess, and deliver. Is that the case? I didn't like that's an interesting insight.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly what we aim for. So it is looking at the combination also of team versus automation, and the processes in your business that you can automate without it jeopardizing the customer interaction or their experience, which tends to stem out further than just email automation. So even onboarding and offboarding and delivery sequences, and how you can amp up client experience, what you can automate in all of that.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so let's. I think the sheer scope of what you guys do could do for a client could lend a typical agency who doesn't have a process to go in a million different directions. But you guys have figured out a process. And one thing that was interesting, if you don't mind, as an entry point, is you didn't always have a process. You said, I think we're in the pre-interview, you were talking about 5-6 years ago, you made a decision to clean up the process to make a go of this agency. So like, what was the before times, and then what was the fulcrum that led you to where you are now? And then I'd be interested to know where you ended up. But I think that decision point is, one of the most critical things. I love to hear your story of where you were before, what made you decide, and what was the ideas that led to your current amazing system.
So I think what you need to know about me primarily is that I started off my own business because I was frustrated working in corporate administration, and the fact that I saw lots of inefficiencies and lots of opportunities for change, and it happens very slowly in a corporate structure or in a large organization. And so that frustration is what drew me to I just want to be able to follow these ideas and create improvements and see the impact that has. And then I followed that path a little bit, and I was trying lots of different things. So I was learning lots of different tools and methodologies. I did lots of courses to learn what it was that I liked, that I was good at, what made me different. And while my children were really young, I kept it very small deliberately, because also being from an admin background and from a family business, I knew that you need certain foundations in place to actually scale a business properly. And I didn't have the time resource to be able to do that with very young kids. So once they grew up a little bit, I had decided, okay, are you actually going to continue this or not? And I liked what I was doing. I liked working with people online. I liked working with all different systems, and that not being a negative. I know there is a big connotation of, if you're playing with too many tools, then you're not niched and it's an issue. But it was always a benefit for me, and it was a benefit for my clients. So I narrowed down in that space, and I evaluated to go, what do I need to do if I actually want to make this bigger, profitable, ongoing, and still be able to pull at different threads to improve. And for me, it was, well, I'm going to need to process. I'm going to need to create templates and make this repeatable and make it so that somebody who isn't me can paint by numbers to understand not only the steps that we take, but why we take them and the thought process. And so then, as I was doing the different jobs that I did, I would document everything. So I would make written SOPs, I'd take screen grabs, I would record videos, and then compile them all together to create, okay, this is what it looks like when we approach this kind of situation.
No, one thing I actually should ask, just as a tangent, it was an interesting thing you just threw out there, which is there's a stigma around using multiple tools. You should focus on the tool, but that implies that your position to the client is entirely based on the ecosystem of that software platform, which is one position. But that's like a plumber being entirely focused on a pump rather than a bathroom, which is what clients care about, perhaps more. And the hardware store is filled with plumbing materials for a reason. But I mean, you ended up. I mean, nothing about your website or your positioning to me screams this is the only thing we do technically. It screams this is what we're gonna. This is the customers we're focusing on, coaches and thought leaders, and we're going to deliver that kind of thought leadership, which is more client oriented. Was that always your position, or did you stumbled into it? Because it sounds like you already decided not to be centered around like HubSpot or Active Campaign, but on something else. Did you always have an idea of who you wanted to serve?
So at the very beginning, I was still trying to work out where I fit. And I actually, yeah, I came up against that stigma of, no, you need to be very niche. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. And then after a little while, I just got really frustrated at even that stigma, because I thought, well, why? If this is what my clients need and it's what I'm good at, I'm actually very versatile, because you're matching to the problems and the goals rather than the tool. So it's, why can't I
Yeah, I mean,
center
you are
around that?
niche. Your niche
Yeah,
is the customer rather
yeah,
than the product. That's what it seems to me. I mean,
yeah,
was that
yes.
always the case though? I mean, or did you? That's interesting.
No,
Yeah, that's great. And
no, no. Yeah.
it wasn't great, or it's like I think that's great. You were like focused on the right and the customer, who's the king, queen, and god. That's what we say, right? Like who's in charge, who has all the money, the client. But did you always have the same client in mind, or did you end up like wandering around until you found the client base that worked for you?
No,
Different agencies are
I
different. I'm just
wandered
curious.
around a little bit. Yeah. No, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know at the start, and I kind of just was working with all different kinds of people, based on the different
Mm-hmm.
skills I had. And then I noticed the pattern. So I actually did a branding course years ago, and that was in the digging into who your ideal clients are and all of those things that we've all done the exercise 14 times. But there was always a pattern, and it was the attitude that the people have. And then these empire builders who it was never a, playing small mindset. And there was always lots of pieces that were getting pulled together. And that's what really drew me. And then I pulled that thread and went, okay, what else are they experiencing? What else do they need? Because they're the people who benefited the most of what I could do and what I liked to do.
Well, yeah, I have to say, like I said at the beginning, your positioning is so sharp, and the brand values that go into the positioning compared to so many other agencies. Uh, you say, look, everyone does this. I don't think everyone does this, and I think it's so interesting that you took the time away from your business to go, what is the business? By going through the courseware around, like, who is my client? What do they want emotionally, and what can I deliver? What am I good at? Which is, not a throw. People throw that away because as a line sometimes, but I want to pull on it because that's part of what led to your sustainable agency, right? I mean, there's more to your sustainable
Yeah,
agency we haven't got to,
absolutely.
but I think that's key, right? Okay, so then you went in, and then you said you're an admin, so you came in with the SOP idea from the beginning, or did you also like have to stumble into like the idea of SOPs because you were like just freelancing at the beginning, right? And then you went to
Yeah.
become hiring people. Yeah. Did you have
Yeah.
SOPs for yourself beforehand, or did?
Not at the very beginning, but then after, it was probably, a year or two in again. And I was frustrated because I was writing the same emails over and over again. And then I was just
Hmm.
like, if this wasn't you, you would have already created a process and a system around that because you're just reinventing the wheel every single time. So then for myself, I started to make just templates, and then it kind of expanded from there.
That's so interesting. It's such a common story, right? Because when you start, most people freelance, they just think they're selling their own time because we think of ourselves as working for the client, but we're business owners, and really we need to be productizing whatever we're doing, and otherwise we're going to lose control of our margins. Okay, so this is like 6 years ago or something that you started doing this. So eventually, this is what I want to get to. Like, there was a moment when things changed from this being Leanne the freelancer to Audacious Empire, like the agency that is like a bit on like a business that you decided to build a business. And so, what was that? What flipped, and then what happened next?
So what flipped was my mindset flipped. I went from testing in my own head, I was testing to see if this was something that was even viable, to determined that it was going to be long term and that I was committed to. Um, I was fully booked, so I had to work out a way to scale because I couldn't just trade my time for money ongoing. Um, and part of what I had always wanted to do was bring more people in, not a huge amount, but enough to give people who possibly didn't have all of the experience or all of the qualifications, but had the right attitude that no one else would really even look at. Because that's what I had found is I was very qualified. So I, when I was going for jobs, got quite a few of them, or would come up, I'd get lots of interviews and then get told, oh, there's 200 people and you. And I just thought, if I wasn't me and didn't have this experience, which was more than the average bear, I would have no hope here. And so it had always been one of my objectives to give people an opportunity, not just based on those obvious things. So I had to find a way to build a business that was going to let me do that. And so once I was fully booked, I went, okay, so the next step is we have to bring people in. And how are we going to do that? Which then means I had to make sure the systems, the processes, not only were they correct in what we were doing, they made sense, but then how were we going to position the business itself so that it wasn't just, I work with Leanne. And that's when it all had to change. So I
Yes.
rebranded, I built Audacious Empires. Um, I hired my first team member who is still with me today and walks around calling herself Mini Leanne. She's fantastic.
It's hilarious.
It's true. And so then from there, once I brought her in, we built it together. So we brainstormed and we looked at different options, and I learnt things and she learnt things, and then we slowly grew the team and the offering as well.
Okay, so a lot of people skip past this, but there is like part of what we talk. I mean, the main thing we talk about is the scalability trap. Hiring someone because you sell time means that you have payroll, which means revenue now has to increase every month to cover payroll, and that's a terrifying part of being an agency owner. And from zero, like for I guess 1 to 2, like or 0 to 1, your first employee, that's a big step, right? Because now you have dependent. How did you know, or did you maybe not know? It's always every agency is different, that you can sustain this choice. I mean, you have to fund it, and then do you have enough client work? Like, what was the moment? Like, how did you know that you could sustain hiring someone, or was it a leap of faith, or a mix? Sometimes it's a mix.
It was a leap of faith, but it was also because I had a wait list. So I knew if there was a way for me to transfer my knowledge, I could at least
Mm-hmm.
sustain one person. And then because in the industry I was operating in, there weren't many people that actually treated businesses like they were businesses. They were more like a freelance scenario, and they weren't trying to build their own ecosystem, nothing like that. So I actually got a lot further faster than people who had been around for a while, purely because I always had a business mindset, because that's what I grew up in a family business. So I applied all of that knowledge fairly quickly, which then gave me the foundations that other people didn't have, which then made me attractive in the market. So that's how I looked at the opportunities, and a lot of them I couldn't take unless I had support. So I took the risk.
Yeah, it's amazing. And this one thing I often ask near the end, but we might as well get to it now. This is a new idea I've learned from these podcasts, but it's the turnaway rate. We talked about it last time, but it's really important for an agency to do this. So the turnaway rate, for those listening, is how many clients, what percentage of clients coming in do you turn down because they're not the best fit? And it's important to have a turnaway rate above 20% to handle downturns. It sounded like you had a pretty high turnaway rate when you're a freelancer, so it gave you the security to do that, which is the first time I've heard that, which is amazing. It's a good solution to that problem. And what's your turnaway rate now? I mean, has it come down, or is it still high? Like, how do you maintain how many clients do you turn down right now?
So I reckon it's probably 30 to 40%.
Yeah, wow, that's great.
Because
Yeah, that's really good.
it's more so that I would rather have people where they'll inspire us and we'll inspire them. And I really don't want to waste anybody's time. So we're not a traditional agency in the sense of the word. And so I never want to work with someone who's looking for that and then we're not the right fit either. So we actually have quite a long onboarding and kind of get to know the client process, just to make sure we're going to be able to work together well, because then we'll be able to get the impact faster.
I just love that you had a huge turnaway rate as a freelancer already, which gave you the sustainability to go into this. And then you started building process, which I guess what we'll get to next. And you maintain that, right? Which is why you have such sustainable. I mean, it's the business mindset, like if you eat every client, then you're like walking right into the trap. This is what I have learned talking to the agencies. Often when we stop recording after the clip, is like, is my business underwater? Yes. Yes.
Yes, it
Welcome
is.
to good luck with the recession. And oh my god, when you have a turnaround rate, you have buffer to manage, and also you can increase your rates, so you have flexibility as an agency. Okay, well, so you hired this person and you went in with a business mindset. This is, I think, the most interesting thing, because you've ended up with a process. Maybe we just skip to the end, because we can get to the whole history, but I think where you've got to is probably more illuminating. So, like when you work with a client, um, it's not just like, well, whatever you want, yes, yes, whatever. There's a process to intake them and then level them and then work with them over a 24-month period. So talk us through how you manage the pipeline of like close, like the fulfillment of a client across their lifetime from the beginning. Let's start with the beginning. So how do you start?
Sure. So how do I start? Actually, if you go for a pre-start, if you will, I actually mapped out all of the correlations that I saw between my audience and found patterns in what, based on their journey and where they were in their business, what then they were going to need. So essentially, it gave me the leveling structure. And I knew, okay, if you're here in your journey, these are the things that you're generally going to be looking at and need to do versus phase 2 versus phase 3. And so that became what triggered the process at the start, which is then a big in-depth, where are you actually now? And show me. I actually want to see the setup. I want to experience what you're experiencing to make sure that gauge is correct. And then once we kind of know where they fit, it tells me automatically, okay, we're going to be looking at one of these things. And out of all of these things, what is going to have the biggest impact the fastest for this specific person? And then we kind of work with the client on 3 core objectives at a time. And so I know that in the first 12 months, there generally is a lot of setup and a lot of bedding in systems, process, and all of those things with our clients. And then once we get past that 12 months, it is more about doing more of the same, scaling, and they don't actually need as much of the in-depth hands-on support. So then we take on more of a consultant type role where it's less of us in the everyday with them, but we're still there and can still help them through troubleshooting or getting, if some of them really want employees or they want different contractors to do different things. So then we help them grow their team, manage their team, and put the system in place around how that whole piece of their operation now works, and can sort of still be there while they're doing more of it and seeing it roll out at a higher level.
That's interesting. And like, first, do you bill for the initial like deep dive, or is it a freebie? Like some people, like different agencies, do different things, and like, and how intense is that deep dive as well?
So it has 2 phases. So up front, it's free and it's more of that gauging if it is likely to be a good fit. So then we kind of do our own internal deep dive, and we, have a couple conversations with the client, and we gather some information about what we can see without being behind the scenes. And then based on that, if it feels like it's a good fit, then we'll move to the next stage. And the next stage is to do strategy, which is more about it's an implementation strategy. How are we going to work together? What would this look like? And that's paid. So that's where we actually get the behind the scenes access to then go, okay, this is what's actually happening. And to solve that, this is our take on it. This is where we think we fit and what you need, and this is what the outcome would be. And part of that is I have a pretty good idea from the outset because of the avatar research I've done. But once I'm at that point, I can then get the data to actually support what my hypothesis is. And whether that means it shows something else and I take a different path, and that's what we do. But it's like we do the initial upfront free, and then we do the strategy, and involved in the strategy is a massive questionnaire. It's there's a series of 3 calls that we do with the client, or we do it in person and do a full day. And then that's all paid. It's all at the start of a project with us.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you've built this questionnaire in quite depth. One of the things, by the way, I learned when I was younger, because I worked for a group facilitation consultancy, and my boss there, he said, we're never going to go into a group facilitation unless we already know the answer to what the outcome is. We're just going to let the clients figure it out on their own. But we already, your job is to make sure I go in there, because you've done knowing what the answer is, because you've done all the background research, doing whatever you need to do to get the answers on your own. And it's true, because if you go into a client engagement not knowing the answers, you could end up surprised, and then you're going to be you could end up like it's a bad fit. You're underwater. It's like you're inventing new things on the fly. That could be chaos, which is not what the client's hiring from you. They're hiring you to bring order, right? So I love that you have this two-phase model as well, where you intake them, and I assume you turn away people from the pre-interview at a very high clip, and then you come into the paid engagement. Do you ever like turn away people after that initial paid engagement as well, or does it basically at that point they're in the process?
There's probably been like not many, like it's probably say 2% or something. It's very low. But we have done that before, where we've looked at it all, and then after discussing with the client, we're just like, this is just going to end up being friction, and it's going to have scope creep, and there's too many variables here, which means that they'll end up frustrated and we'll end up unprofitable. So let's just not do this anymore, and then we move away. But
Are those always the clients
to that stage,
who are creative? Oh, sorry.
yes.
Are those the clients who are always like, I have an idea? I hate those clients. Stop having ideas. Have pain. I can solve pain.
Yes. A lot of my clients do have ideas though, but because I'm bossy as a person, it becomes this is our process for ideas. Your ideas are fantastic, but we're not going to talk about them right now.
Here's your doll and a crayon and a piece of paper. Go in the corner and have your idea. Come back when we get back to work. That's what your staff is for. You hire me, you're getting an output. Yes. Well, otherwise you lose control. I mean, then everyone's gonna be mad because you don't even know what you're doing. Then you're like, I've never done that before. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm one of those clients with ideas, and it's a problem, as you can imagine. Okay, so it's not entirely true, but I've been that client. Okay, so you level set them, and then by the way, this level setting thing is interesting. I'm a card. Plus, it's like 9:42 p.m. and I've been with my sick kids for like a week and a half. So, like I said, I don't talk to adults anymore. So this is my adult time. I appreciate it. So you level set them, and they kind of go on different tracks, right? So you deep dive them, and then you said some of them they need to do the setup, some of them are in coaching, and you said you have 3 tracks, right? It's like what are the 3 tracks that they might go on? So like baseline, the foundations, and then coaching, and what's the other one?
Yeah. So generally it is they want to shift. So that is the lowest level, and that is where they're good at what they do. They have a reputation, but they want to move to a one-to-many model. They want to start building that personal brand, thought leadership, and they don't quite have the infrastructure or know how to do it. Then the second level is they've already done that bit. They've got some of the assets and products up. They've already have a list happening, and they want to work out how to add in additional and create funnels. So it becomes more about how do I amplify my impact. And now that I know that the products that I have work and people are interested in them, and I've got people who want to hear my message, what's the next step here? And how do I scale that to make more revenue? And so we look at all of those things and start creating the rest of, say, the product suite or what their ecosystem is going to look like as a business. Then the third step is they have all the core pieces, and it is about amplifying their brand and how do we get more traffic, how do we scale the people coming in to the different funnels so that then they can get the ultimate impact because they're world changers, right? So how do we look at what we've got and look at our data to then go, okay, if we want to impact more people or if we want to change a specific thing, what's our approach to that and how are we going to do that now? So it becomes less about building the internals and more of how do we reach our external foundational objective for existence.
Yeah, that's great. And I wanted to bring that up because one thing you also mentioned, and again, simple line for you, but I think it's a really good point, is you only focus on three goals a quarter per client. And being bossy is key because that's what the clients are hiring you to do. Like you're their therapist. They want you to just tell them what to do because they don't know, right? They're freaking out, right? But the fact that you are like, here are your three goals. I love that you have ideas. This is what we're doing. It's great, and they've
Yeah.
organized it by maturity, so that you've taken your services and packaged them up and applied them in some kind of coherent structure. So even your team can't like start going, let's go do the amplification. Nope, you're in foundation mode. Let's stick with that. That is pretty smart because then you can guarantee success and reliable results because you're not like randomly just reacting to what the client wants. You can give them a framework of action and they're going to believe you, right? Because you've done it a billion times. you know do you show
Well,
them
that's
I
the whole
assume you
thing is
show them
that,
like, yeah.
yeah, I do. I show them many, many, many things, and quite often I will make many different like diagrams and flowcharts and everything to work with. However, I think they will understand what I'm trying to communicate to them. And I think too, because people come to us, they're overwhelmed, they're idea smiths. They do have all the ideas, but what they find is they start all these ideas and then they can't ever get it to a point where it's profitable enough to fund the next idea. And so what I learned was if you were to just follow the bouncing ball with all the different ideas, they end up without any money and they end up frustrated. Um, and they may as well have never had any of the ideas. So once I can explain to them, we just need to do it in a certain order and we need to finish ideas before we start the next one so that then you're still around for the next idea and the next idea. And once they have that grounding, it's almost like they have permission to focus to and get something that is really, really valuable. And then because they've focused and they've put in the time and the effort into this one thing, they see the impact because it gets released into the world. And then that spurs them even more. And so it's that communication piece of this is why we say that. And we don't want to limit your creativity ever. So there is always a place for ideas and brainstorm and all of those things, but we decide together where it fits.
That's amazing. And do clients stick with you as they go from tier to tier to tier, or they stick in the tier and it takes them so long and then they just exit your pipeline for a while and then they come back? Like how, like, do you keep them through all three tiers? Like, because it takes a lot of time to mature a thought leadership. So I'm just curious how the life cycle works with your clients.
Yeah, we have a bit of a mix, to be honest. We've had some people who come at the very beginning and then they stay, and we can never leave them, which is their language, which we love, and that's great. Um, but it takes a very determined and resilient kind of person to be able to continually put into their business at that level. Whereas then we'll have other clients who will kind of do one of the stages and then they take it, they go away, they take a breather. And then when they're ready to kind of tackle a whole new level of growth phase, then they'll come back.
That's so interesting. And what is another this is another thing to track is your past client book, how much new work comes, how many of your project engagements per year are being converted out of your past client book. Do you know that percentage?
Ooh,
I don't
no,
know if you do,
not off
but
the
it's
top
an
of my
interesting
head.
question.
No, it is.
Because that's another part of sustainability. Because there are a few like one of the things that I'm getting to build with these podcasts is what is the kind of financial model options of an agency, because there's millions of ways to be an agency. That's okay, but like there are
Yeah,
some things that are just economics or you know thermodynamics, if you will. So if you have a large client pipeline coming in, then your turn away rate can go up and your rates can go up, right? And you can get more focused and you can actually have happier clients to work with, right? So everything is better. I mean, everyone knows that in agencies. That's why the desperation in our agency cocktails group. By the way, for those who want to drink, agencycocktails.com. We buy drinks for people who are having the pain. There you go. But the main thing people want is client acquisition because they don't have the turnaway rate that you have. But once you have that, then your past clients can come back because you are giving them, you're proving to them there's room to grow with you, right? Like you start here and then, well,
yeah,
come back, we have more for you, and they trust you, right? So that even they come immediately or sometime later, there's going to be retention later, and that's a really important thing to do as an agency. I'm starting to come up with this thing, all-inclusive marketing agencies. Like if you're an aim, as they are, you have no aim, and then clients don't know how to. They say we have room to grow because we can do everything, but there's no structure for the plan to know when
yeah,
clients should come back. But you don't. You have solved that
yeah,
problem with the tiering. So I mean, that's why I had to ask because it's
yeah,
such a brilliant way to do work. Okay, and then anyway, it's interesting. It's a good metric to track because then you can start predicting over time. If you have so many clients in your book, you know, you're
yeah,
as an owner, what you might have as an asset because it's quite valuable. Which is ultimately the last question we always trying to get to with this whole exercise: what do you actually own as an agency, as an owner? Because it should eventually pay for your retirement, for building an asset, a business that you own, rather than a place to work. You're working today, but you should be
yes,
owning it. And so what is the equity,
yeah,
right? It's going to be
100%.
this process and the pipeline, the happy clients, your knowledge you've transferred into your staff, like you said, not just mini Leannes, but hopefully strong, resilient, whoever they are on their own.
Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
the last thing is like, so you mentioned like there's kind of a 4 month kind of flow with the clients, like the first. So talk us about the commercials, like how you engage them in the first. We talked about the initial engagement, but then they agree on the implementation project. So what happens then? I think it's like over the year, right? The 12 months, and then what's your first engagement
Mhm.
structure, and then how does it convert for the trailing 12?
Yeah, okay. So once we've kind of decided on across the board, this is the strategy we're going with, these are our focuses, we actually pull things down into quite a lot of detail so that there is transparency across the board of what we're doing, who's doing what, and what they can expect. And then as we're moving through the implementation of that, say, we have regular check ins to kind of measure progress and just openly discuss if there's been hurdles or if something is getting results that are extreme and we didn't expect it, and whether we need to kind of tailor our approach a little bit more. And so we have that ongoing communication, which then informs, again, the three goals that we had. And at the end of, close to the end of the first quarter, we look at the next three and we look at the next three. Um, and then once we've done, say, a year, we've accomplished quite a bit. And after that, it becomes okay, so what are the next phases for you? And what's the burnout level? And where in your headspace are you? Because of how much change can happen in that first 12 months. And it can just be quite onerous. So then we say, okay, let's change the pace a little bit so that we can still build what we have, but at a slower rate, because we're not having to do as much analyzation of if something is working. Like if we're testing things by this stage, we already know if that works for this audience or doesn't. If the tool combination is correct, we've already done all of that. So it means that the next 12 months can be a little bit easier because we've got now some solid data. There's less moving pieces. Yeah, so then we move to the next 12 months at a slower rate. And then after that point, they're either ready to go up again, or they're like, okay, cool, I want to go out, I want to run this for a bit longer, get more money in, see where else I can take it, and then I'll come back when I want to grow again.
I mean, thought leadership, that mean usually the business didn't go like they thought it might. It's usually what happens, I imagine. But they'll figure it out. Some of them will figure it out from there, and they'll come back. That's so interesting. And then, like, do you have, like, do you work on a retainer basis, or is it hourly? Like, how do you bill for all this so that you can control your margins? I know the answer, but what's the answer for the people who haven't taught you yet?
Okay, so I'm very anti-hourly. Everything is
Yes.
very outcome based, which is where we stick to 3 things, because that is what I know based on the levels and what I know is they're going to need. I've already done all of the time tracking. I've already done all of the processes. So I know what what the expense to us is going to be able to deliver that service. And therefore we just have set pricing and we work to that pricing, and it makes scope creep really obvious as well. So it's sticking within our 3 things, and as long as we stick within the 3 things we set, we're going to be profitable. If we start to add in extra or we change it too dramatically, that's when there's alarm bells. So I have quite rigorous processes around not doing that. It's stick to the plan as long as it still meets the objective, and we don't kind of stray from that, and we don't just add extra things on, because that's when we start to lose out and the client starts to lose the impact. So that's how I know from the get-go what's profitable and how much effort from a business perspective and a team perspective we can put in so that it stays profitable. And then if it looks like it's going in a bad direction, I reshape it, or I'll go back to their client and say, what do you want to do here? And I'll either do an add-on and quote for the set fee, again, not an hourly rate, a set fee to do whatever the extra is, or I'll say we need to push this back and we'll move that into the next 3.
Okay, so there's a little bit there that you put in there, like it was obvious, like you did time tracking like crazy, that we should get back to. But let's focus on this. So you said you have processes, because not many people have done as much metrics as you have. But like the I'm more interested in this question now. You have processes to control scope creep. One thing I should have asked you: the 3 goals that you offer the clients each quarter, are those like from a menu you have secretly in the back, or are you actually creatively coming up with them for each client given the circumstance? Like are these goals like these are the goals we're going to offer them, or based on listening to the client, are you adapting to them? Like that's I think a really important question, because that can control scope creep by itself.
Yeah, exactly. So they come from mainly listening to them, listening and then comparing the problem and the pain versus the desire. So we're either, depending on where they are and what is motivating them at that time, we'll either create some goals that are to solve the pain or are to grow, achieve the desire. So based on that and based on the different
Okay, so
levels,
these are
generally
goals in
they're the
client
same
world.
kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay. These are goals coming from client world. Okay, and then sorry, we're overlapping. We're a bit delayed. It's a bit silly, but you're in Australia. I'm in Canada, so it has to go around the world 7 times. I watched Superman. That's how things work, apparently. So the. So then sorry, and then the goals you said were matching up to. And sorry, I was cutting you off. So they match up internally to something you're saying?
Yes. So when we do the whole business kind of analysis, we look at what that business needs and how the client as a person who's running this business then feels, and what they think is the most, like what they want to happen versus what needs to happen, and then what we know based on past experience. So generally they're similar things, but they are tailored to the client. So um we listen to them and we come up with like a customized thing, but the pieces essentially are from a pool of pieces. It's very
Okay.
rare that we have to do something that's totally left of field.
And the thing that you mentioned in that previous story to this that made me wonder now was if they came up with a completely new out of scope project that could become a goal for the next quarter, but that requires creative effort on your end. Like you didn't time track that. So how do you control the profitability of new stuff? Or because that scares me. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not like saying it's impossible, but it's not controlled. So what happens there?
No. Yeah. When it is something like that, I'm just really upfront about it. And if we've not done it before, or it's an exploration kind of thing, then that's what I say. And I won't put like we're going to have achieved this by here. So that goal might go over 2 quarters, like whatever it is. So if it's generally not something that we do and do on repeat, but someone really wants us to do it and we're intrigued by it. Um, One, I have built in like a learning budget essentially, so that if it is something that
Hmm.
we think, no, there's merit in that and we actually want to explore it, in a way, we're getting paid to then train. So I have that built in. And then the flip side is if the clients are wanting us to do it, it's like, well, then I can't guarantee the outcome or I can't predict it because I've not done it before, which means it might take longer or the scope might change for it. And then we have to be able to have those conversations ongoing. And so then once we get into something, usually in, say, the first stage of a new goal or objective or something like that, you'll then get a quick idea of if this thing is going to end up snowballing because there's so many different facets, or if it looks like it's going to be quite controlled. And if it's a snowballing situation, then we just have those open communications with the client about it and what we can actually do to continue to keep our service level.
Okay, that's so interesting. And like you mentioned, you have processes to control scope creep. Um, what are they? I mean, that's critical. Um, so how do you stop your creative team from getting too creative? Because they always want to serve the client, you know. So how do you? What are you doing to clamp that down?
Yes. Yes. So it is more about the more that we can break things down, it becomes quite obvious when something is not in there. And because I use Asana to rule the world, I have all reporting dashboards built into it. So I can see the workload and the effort level of different people, and I can see what's coming up. And because my team is a core group of specialists in different things, based on who is involved, I already know the type of work and the pathway we're going down. So if there's something where someone else is brought in and I know that that's not going to support one of the objectives, then I know, okay, there's something happening there that wasn't expected. And what is it? And what do we need to do about it? And the team is pretty good. Like they know the buffer of if it is a very small thing, then it's okay. But if it is an actual job in itself, then we have to go back and we have to create a plan around it. We can't just go and do it. And then if I see additional things getting added in to our 90-day run, well, then that tells me something's either changed or we made a mistake or what is it that's going on here. And then I follow those through. So because of how we set everything up, it creates that ongoing visibility.
That's interesting. Okay. And then we should talk a bit about the time tracking. So like you metered all this stuff at some point. So how did you do that? Because I think that's a really valuable skill for an agency to have. And I've been on the one side of it that was atrocious because the projects were chaotic and nothing was predictable. So why were we tracking time? It's only to bill the client every 6 seconds. It's like, please stop this. That's nuts. That's what I think a lot of people think agency time tracking is for, billables. But you're not billing by the hour, so time tracking is still important. So let's talk about your time tracking and how you use it.
Yeah. So I still I think it's a good exercise to know. I think that too, it helps inform scope. So if I know something generally takes an hour and then somebody says to me this is going to take them half a day, it says to me I've not communicated the scope properly. So my purpose of time tracking was to build up kind of like a shopping list of how long different things take, and if we come across a certain issue or they're built in a different system, what the impact of that has. So I actually just, for a long time, tracked my time. Every time I did a certain kind of job, I would track it. And then that evolved to, okay, estimate how long it takes you, and then go back and compare whether you were right or wrong and why. And then it helped build everything out. And so now, once I had that foundation, I still do it with my team. We'll every so often go in, spend a fortnight tracking all of the things that we do, and then seeing if we're doing the guess and doing I reckon it's going to take this long, and how long does it actually take, and what's involved and why, to see if there's things that have just snuck in along the way. But none of that is, like you said, it's not billed by the hour to the client. It is for the purpose of making sure we're still profitable, and what used to be setting up an email system is still setting up an email system, and it's not twice the amount of work now because of what's available, or half. So it's more making sure our data is accurate.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, this has been so interesting. This is we've gone quite some depth. So many more questions I should ask you, but let's just wrap it up. How do people find you? First, they should find you because, like I said, whether you believe it or not, your branding is really strong and your processes are really good. So first, any agency should just look at what you're doing. But also, we have a lot of thought leaders out here. So where on the interwebs might we find you?
So primarily audaciousempires.com. That's us. If you Google Leanne Woff, you will find me. But also everything is at Audacious Empires. So that was something that I set up quite early on. So if you have a Google, you'll find the right people.
Amazing. And for anyone who made it to the end and you need a drink, that's what we do. So come sign up for our little club of agency owners, agencycocktails.com. And we buy drinks fairly frequently, wherever you are in the world. We hang out, talk, shop. And if you're in pain from not being in the scalability trap, we'll take it away with a bottle of wine or whatever. That's what we do. Thank you so much, Leanne. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. That was really fun.
It was. You're really good at what you do, and I have about another 3 hours of questions I have, but I think we have to wrap it up before I eat up your whole day.
No.
All right. Thank you so much.
Save the listeners' ears.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.